Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me. And check it out, man. I've got a new guest on my channel here, Scot Lade. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Brendan. Thank you so much. Been a big fan of yours for a long time. You and I have done some stuff together with Pete Pardo over at Sea of Tranquility.
Yeah,
We've worked together, but never before, just the two of us. So this is going to be exciting
this is going to be fun. And then,
because I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. So I am, trying to keep the fanboyism down. But the fact that we've worked together before should calm my nerves just a little bit. You've come up with a great topic for today's episode.
yeah, I think so, right? So, what's the best era of an artist? I mean, because this can go any which way, and whether we're talking about changes in band members or we're just talking about changes in style or sound, you pointed it out when we were starting to talk about this that any band that has been around as long as a lot of the bands that we love, bands like Pink Floyd and Whitesnake, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, just any of these great bands have gone through a lot of eras of different sounds.
They have, and even some bands go so far as to name right the different eras as a Mark one,
That's
two,
right.
three, four. What are we at? Mark nine now with Deep Purple? Is it nine or 10? I
I
don't
don't know, it
know.
might be nine. I thought it was eight, but I can't keep them all straight anymore.
Yeah, Steve Morse isn't in the band, so
That's right.
That was eight. So we got to be. Yeah, there
Okay,
you
then
go.
we're
That's nine, I think.
Simon McBride makes it number
Yep,
nine, and
yep,
Deep Purple's going to be one that we should definitely talk
absolutely.
about. Before we jump into it, though, I wanted to hit on something that I think most people are aware of. It doesn't always get put out there, which is it really comes down to the era of which you got into the band.
Oh yeah.
So I'm a bit younger than you. I'm a child of the 80s. I grew up, being aware of all of that sort of stuff, which for some of the bands out of the 70s, not their most popular eras. Or maybe they were at the time commercially, like, yes, but a
Yeah.
lot of people don't want to acknowledge that that's, their favorite thing. Um, so I think when you get into a band is a critical thing, and a lot of that has to do with your age at the
Absolutely.
time.
And I, it is all about your age
Yeah.
because something happens to the young male brain at 13 years old, more or less, where I don't know, maybe it's puberty, maybe it's
Right.
just all of a sudden the earwax disappears. You have a road to Damascus moment with music, and all of a sudden you're hearing stuff you've never heard before.
Yeah.
Music becomes really important to you at
Mhm.
a certain age. I know it did for you, man.
Yeah,
There was
man.
that certain age where all of a sudden music became the most important thing in the entire universe. And at that moment,
Hmm.
right, that's kind of like a snapshot
It is.
when
It
you were
really is.
13. So that's kind of why I look at certain bands like Genesis have
Hmm.
very easy to identify eras, right? You had
Hmm.
five-man Genesis with
Right.
Gabriel, and then you had that short era where it was four-man Genesis before Steve Hackett left, and then three-man Genesis in the 80s and
Right.
90s, very, very pop. Uh, where you were at 13 years old in that story arc probably determines which version of that band you prefer. Same with Rush, right? You had
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
hard rock era,
Mhm.
right? And then they had their prog era, and then they had their synth era, and then they had their neo grunge era, whatever.
Yeah.
And where you were at 13 years old probably determines a whole bunch how you feel about that band. And there's exceptions to that, of course. You might have
Yeah.
come into a band later on in life or whatever, but to me, that has a lot to do with why. For example, my favorite band is Yes.
Hmm.
No shocker there. Uh,
None.
but there's people that are just a little bit older than me
Hmm.
that prefer stuff like Going for the One. Me, I prefer like Close to the Edge and Tales
Right.
from Topographic Oceans, and then people that are a little younger still than me prefer stuff like the 80s 90125 and Big
Right.
Generator and stuff. So, it really has a lot to do with how old you are, which version of a band you like, but not always, right?
Right. Right. No, not always. Um, let's go ahead and dive into yes. That's your being your favorite band.
Yeah, that's my band. Yeah.
A number of eras right in that. And I grew up in the 80s, so I did know Owner of a Lonely Heart. That was the one Yes song that I knew, but I was too young in 83 to be the fan. In fact, you're talking about this age of 13 thing.
Yeah.
1989, I was 13. So that
Oh,
that sets where my mind was, and I was into a lot of the glam metal and stuff. But in the so my favorite album from them is Union, which I
yeah.
think is what 1991.
Yeah.
And a lot of people hate that album. I think including the band don't like that album. But for me, it's fantastic. It's a mix of both eras, and I love that.
You see, that's a perfect example of exactly what we're talking about. Because when I did my ranking of all 23 Yes albums, I believe I had that at number 21.
What was your 23?
uh, Open Your Eyes.
Oh, see, that was going to be my next thing because the
Uh,
album that I really got into the band on was Open Your
you see?
Eyes.
Yeah.
I love that. But I do know that that's really a Chris Squire and Billy Shearwood album that
Yeah.
became a Yes album. So I get that.
It wasn't supposed to be a Yes song, but the history of Yes is replete with those moments. When they brought Trevor Rabin in, he was hoodwinked. He didn't
Yeah.
think he was joining a band called Yes. He had
Yeah.
no desire to be in a band called Yes.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they have this album done in the can. It sounds great, and Chris Squire has the idea. Let's bring John Anderson in, and maybe that high tenor might sound great over yours and mine voices. And next thing you know, it's the Yes album. But those records are great.
So you
I'm a
still
huge
like
fan.
them?
I love them all.
You
So
do. Okay.
yeah, I do. They never put out a horrible album or anything like
Right.
that. Yeah,
It's much like Styx. I don't think
yeah.
they've ever put out a horrible album, but they've got distinct eras. And I know you agree with me that their uh, last three albums
Uh,
that they've done, they're doing some of their best stuff today. Whether we call this an era or not, it doesn't have Dennis DeYoung in it, but I think this is some of the best stuff that they've done.
yeah. I
So,
agree. I think all three of those albums are incredible. In fact, if I'm being really honest,
Mhm.
yeah, I think Grand Illusion is still my favorite Styx album, but
Yeah.
I think that's the best three album run they've had.
Oh, I would agree with that.
You
But
know?
again, I'm a quote newer fan,
Yeah.
even though I've been listening to them for 35 years. But yeah, out of the original run with the Dennis DeYoung stuff, Grand Illusion is also my favorite. I always like Pieces of Eight a lot.
Yeah.
That,
I
that
love
got
Pieces of Eight.
more of the hard rock sound on it,
Yeah.
which I think is,
More Tommy.
yes. And I was
Yeah.
going to say that's I think why I am such a fan of the post Dennis DeYoung era because I always liked the harder rock inside of Styx than necessarily the Dennis DeYoung stuff. So having that I think was great stuff to have, and Tommy sure produces lots of that going forward.
No, I saw Styx a couple years ago on the Crash of the Crown tour,
Hmm.
and I was absolutely amazed at how great the band was, how energetic the band was, how excited and happy they looked to be playing 1,500 seater in Lima, Ohio. Right, but they didn't care, man. They were
Yeah.
having a great old time. They were making it happen. Uh, and for a moment there, you're thinking Dennis DeYoung who? And I never thought I'd say that. This version of the band is that good. It's that energized. Will Evankovich is such an amazing songwriter, good singer, amazing producer. He's kind of the secret sauce of all three of those albums.
Right.
And they stand behind those records. They played music from both The Mission and Crash of the Crown that night.
That's
I
great.
mean, most bands they don't do that. And I know understand why, the legacy acts don't play new material. The promoters won't let them.
Yeah,
They demand to see a set list before they put their money onto a tour. And
really.
if you deviate from said set list, you are in breach of contract.
Oh my.
So you need to make sure that it's nothing but hits on your set list. Styx is like, we don't care, man. Yeah, we got hits in there,
Mhm.
but we got new stuff in there too. And if you don't like it, tough. I love that.
And I'm glad that there's a band that does that. And I think that's one of the reasons that these bands, a band like Styx, a band like Deep Purple, who also puts in new stuff, um, continues to find new ground this far
Yeah,
into their career because they're doing that. Whereas you have a band like AC/DC who puts out an album and they play a few of the songs from it, two, three, not even
right,
a lot. And then by the next album, they don't play anything from it.
right, right.
and that's always really bummed me out. I've been a fan of the band the whole time. I want to hear some stuff from all the different eras.
Yeah.
And Styx is one that does it. Yes is one that does it. I think if more bands would do that, play more off the new albums and continue bringing some of that along with it, it's sort of like with Guns N' Roses, who I know you're not a big fan of, but when they finally went out on the road and started playing the Chinese Democracy stuff with the reunion lineup, playing it night after night after night, that album went from not selling anything to going platinum. And we're talking about in 2016,
Right.
2017, where
Yeah,
we have
nobody was going platinum in 2016.
nobody. Right. So it shows you that playing songs from an album, even when the general populace is saying, "Oh, that's not a great album," right? They have better stuff.
Yeah.
You can actually turn people on
I
to
think
you.
so. I think
Yeah.
so. And conversely, if the band is telling the universe, we don't even believe in this material, come on, who? No, you're not fooling anybody if you're not playing this stuff live. I mean, if you don't even like it, you're asking the public to like it. Not going to happen. And I do like Chinese Democracy. I think Bumblefoot's awesome.
Yeah, he
By
is
the way,
good.
he's a great guy. He's very cool, and he definitely made that record for sure.
Yeah,
But
Sons of
yeah,
Apollo is fantastic.
oh, I miss Sons of Apollo already.
Yeah,
I do.
I hope they make a comeback. Two albums.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see that happening, but
No,
you
no.
know, we were talking about yes, we were talking about Styx. I mentioned Genesis,
Right.
but another band that I'm really into that had very, very distinct eras, and what time you popped into the band
Mhm.
has everything to do with your enjoyment level is King Crimson.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, those first four albums are all kind of different, but all kind of the same melancholy, dreamy kind of thing. And then all of a sudden you get John Wetton and Bill Bruford in the band. You've got a whole different thing.
Yep.
And then they go away. They come back with Tony Levin and Adrian Belew, and they're a
Yeah.
whole different thing. And then they've got the double trio thing going on. And then they have the three drummer thing going on. I mean, all these different distinct flavors. I mean, King Crimson's a tough band to get into because of it. I
Yeah,
think all the different eras.
I think
Uh,
so. But I got into them from the Adrian Belew era in the
yeah,
80s with the Beat,
yeah. I
album.
see. I would have guessed that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I
you're
tried to
proving our point here.
I tried to get into them with the John Wetton era, and I just wasn't able to get into Red at the time. So I don't know. I needed to find a different way to get shoehorned in, and these different eras, I think, can do that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So if you're not into that particular style of sound of a band, you can get into a certain part, and then if you really like that, it might open you up to, different
Now you're
the
you're
other
absolutely
earlier
right
stuff.
because I, of course, being the child of the '70s that I am, and a ginormous Yes fan, the minute Bill Bruford joined King Crimson, I got super interested. So those John Wetton, Bill Bruford,
Yeah.
Robert Fripp albums are my three favorite King Crimson albums. But you're absolutely right; it made me go back to the first four because
Mm,
I had only heard the first one.
yeah.
With the crazy album cover. It didn't really get me. I liked it. I didn't love
Yeah.
it. Greg Lake's voice was nice, but it definitely made me go back and investigate the first four more deeply. And another example of that, you're wearing the shirt, bro. I mean,
Yep.
uh, you can't tell me of a band that has more distinct eras, right? From the
Right.
psychedelic Pink Floyd
Hmm.
to the prog Pink Floyd to the AOR Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
It's almost like three different bands.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got the members changing within it. So not only is the style changing, but members are changing.
Yeah.
And that's always a defining thing too that I think will drop fans off if somebody leaves. If you're younger when you come in and the band members have already changed, it's easier to accept who the current lineup is
Yeah.
without somebody being part of it. When I came into Yes, in the 90s era there, and we're not having, like Rick Wakeman was not part of the
Yeah.
open
But
ear.
that didn't bother you. You didn't.
I
Yeah.
didn't know,
Yeah.
right? It didn't phase me at that time. Um, but a lot of those bands, and you talk about Bill Bruford going from Genesis over to King Crimson, right? A lot of these bands, members move between.
Yeah.
And I always think that's a really cool thing too, that if you come into a band and you do have certain members and then members change and go somewhere else, that'll be a shoehorn for when somebody might get into another band.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I would pick up a record and I would see a name on there, even if they weren't a member of the band, even if it was just like a guest musician on one track. It's like, oh wow, Steve Howe played on that album. I got to pick it up, you know. So yeah, fandom does crazy things with your spending habits, right?
Oh
Especially
yeah,
if you're a kid, especially when I was coming up, man, there was no internet. We didn't have any access to all this database of information that we can,
yeah,
just get at, the click of a thumb now. Man, I would spend hours and hours and hours in the record store just looking at every single record, reading every single line on the back, wishing I could crack it open and
right.
see what is on the gatefold. Hours on end. The staff at the Peaches in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah,
I apologize because I probably spent 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I was thinking, why aren't I getting paid?
right.
I'm here often enough. I'm here 40 hours a week. But, so yeah, that's a big deal right there because you follow your favorite artists. And, maybe the younger generation, Brandon, is a little bit more immune to this in that
Mm,
it's the era of free agency and NIL and the transfer portal,
right.
all this crazy stuff going on in athletics. So maybe, with music, it's the same thing now. We don't mind if, oh, wow, the drummer from Foo Fighters and Nine Inch Nails are swapping, and nobody
Right.
cares anymore, but back in the day, it would have been like, I don't know if I can even listen to that band anymore if member X or member Y or member Z is no longer in it. And I kind of used to be that way, you know.
I mean, I remember, the when David Lee Roth is out of Van Halen, right? We got
Perfect
distinctors
example.
there. Yeah. So, and the sound changes,
And I love Montrose. I love Sammy Hagar, but it was not David Lee Roth. It was a problem. It,
yeah,
it bothered with my brain. I didn't like it.
it went from like party rock, over the top, bombastic,
Yeah.
kind of stuff to AOR melodic rock
Yeah.
sounding Van Halen. And now I grew up with Sammy Hagar era.
Yeah.
So I've always been more a fan of that than
You
David Lee
see,
Roth.
I wouldn't,
Yeah,
that would have been my guess, and I'm
yeah,
the other way
right.
around. I absolutely adore David Lee Roth era Van Halen, particularly those first four
Yeah.
albums, man. Just butt rock deluxe. Oh, come
I,
on.
I will say,
Van Halen 2 is probably my favorite.
yeah, I was going to say, see, what's my favorite? I mean, in the years going on from it, even when I was when Sammy Hagar was part of the band and I was getting into that sort of stuff, it wasn't until years later I really went and took a listen to these albums and just found out how great they really
Yeah.
were, kind of
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
But, Van Halen at the time, they weren't playing a lot of stuff off these.
No.
They were playing like three Roth era songs. So me as a fan, I'm going to the shows. I'm not hearing that stuff. I'm
Yeah.
staying in the Sammy Hagar era stuff. And it wasn't until later on where I discovered it has to do with what's getting played on radio, what bands are playing
Sure.
live, who's in the band. But
Yeah. Yeah.
you brought a good point up saying that kids today don't seem to care as much about who's in the bands. And I think that's what's also given these bands a longer life. I mean, we got a lot of these classic bands going out who don't have the original
Yeah.
members, and yet they're still playing to big venues.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Yes gets a lot of heat for not having any original members, but you know what? That's the case for a lot of bands right now.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think for the most part, if you're a fan of a classic rock band and you're thinking about getting tickets to see said classic rock band at some venue near you, you're probably smart enough to do a little bit of research ahead of time and see exactly who's in the band now, because there's very little truth in advertising involved there, and so yeah, buyer beware before you buy your tickets
Right, right,
to go see Yes, and you're expecting John Anderson and Rick Wakeman and everybody to be there. That's it's not going to be that. It's the Steve Howe show now, but
right.
I think we're okay with it as long as you give me a good product. At the end of the day, if I leave the venue satisfied, then I'm feeling pretty good about it. And
Yeah,
You
I'm okay
can't.
with it. These bands that have changed members all the time, that has been their MO. Bands like
Yeah,
Deep Purple, bands that Yes, that have gone through that. I don't see what they're doing today is any different than what they did back in the 70s. It's not like they held a solid lineup for
right,
10 years or 20 years, and
right.
then now they're out on the road. There's a few bands that are like that where there's a
There were a
drummer.
handful, sure. There's
Yeah.
always the, for every Yes, that or Uriah Heep that had 20, 25, 30 different band members. There would be a U2 or a Rush,
Mhm.
that retained a very solid, stable lineup over long periods of time. So it is interesting how
Mhm.
sometimes changing band members will automatically make a band sound change.
Mhm.
Sometimes you don't have a lineup change, like we mentioned Rush with their different eras.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't because they had a lineup change. You
No,
know,
no, they chose to do that on their own to simplify the songs and get on the radio and you know Tom Sawyer, Limelight, all of that sort of stuff.
You just get bored doing the same stuff over and over and over. So,
Well,
when bands start going into different directions,
mhm.
sometimes us fans don't really like it. I know I'm talking about all my favorite eras. Oh wow, it's always the early era, because I'm an old guy. Uh and yeah, bands change and they grow and yeah, I was very upset when Owner of a Lonely Heart came out. I was very upset when Steve Hackett left Genesis and they started doing hits. But, in retrospect, I was wrong. I was dead wrong. That's great music. It's just different music, right? It wasn't what I was used to listening to. So I took it out on those artists. That's kind of dumb. But the average record buyer, average music listener is truly a fickle beast, man. On my
Yeah,
channel, I can't tell you
yeah.
how many times I hear per day somebody saying, I don't listen to anything after the 70s.
I hate hearing that though.
Yeah,
I feel like people are missing out on
they
such
are, man.
great stuff.
They
I get it
are.
that members change, it sounds different, but there's if a band is still bringing the essence or the hallmark of what it is with new people doing it the way that like Styx is doing it or Deep
Styx.
Purple is doing it.
Deep Purple.
And
I'm sorry. I love the new Yes album, Mirror to the
yeah,
Sky. I think it's absolutely incredible. We
yeah,
mentioned Uriah Heep.
yeah. They're
They're on
another
a
one.
they're on a little hot streak, man. Their last like three albums have actually been very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of really, really great music being made by, these legacy acts. How about the new Alice Cooper band album?
I
That's not
love it.
that's not a bad record at all,
Not at
man.
all.
So
I just did a
you don't even need to explore any of the thousands of new bands that are out there that about half of them seem to want to send me their album in my inbox. I mean, it's just insane how much music is out there. But even if you just stay in the lane of the bands that you loved when you were a kid,
mm-hmm.
a lot of them are still making great music. And
Yeah.
you
People who
just got
talk
to
about
open your ears, man.
that there's no new
Mm,
good music out
mm,
there is wrong. And like you said, you don't even have to go to the actual brand new bands.
no.
You just look at the bands that you already love and give it a chance. There's some great stuff in there.
Oh yeah, the new Jethro Tull album was
Yeah,
outstanding. I thought that was an amazing record. Uh, so even
yeah.
if you're a fan of more straight-laced artists like Bruce Springsteen and stuff, they're gonna be putting out music worth listening to. I don't know about you, but I don't want to watch the same movie over and over
Yeah.
or read the same book over and over or watch the same episode of How I Met Your Mother over and over.
Yeah.
Right? Why would you
Yeah.
want to listen to the same albums over and over? It doesn't make any sense at all to me. It really doesn't.
But I
It's
think those are
laziness.
those are people that aren't like us that devour music. I mean, I have music playing all the time.
Yeah.
So the idea for me that I could only listen to, say, the first seven Alice Cooper band albums and nothing after that,
Yeah.
I would just be so tired of it. Right. And I
Exactly.
already am because a lot of those songs that are on those albums are worn out.
Yeah.
But you've got all these different eras that Alice Cooper moves through. He moves through late 70s style almost disco infused music, and he moves into new wave, and then
Hey man, flush the fashion.
right? It's a
I am
great
gonna
album.
stand up for Flush the Fashion. I
Yeah,
have that as my third favorite Alice Cooper album.
that's crazy. I don't
After Killers and Love It to Death, that to me is just, I
love
love
it
it.
to
I
death.
love
It's
every song
great.
on that album.
I love Lace and Whiskey,
Yeah, that was a good one too.
right? Um, but he's got all these different eras of
Yeah,
stuff going into the 80s metal and then the glam metal, and then he does an alternative rock album in 95, and then he
yeah,
does an industrial metal
yeah, he
album.
did. Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know. But he's like a David Bowie, he's the chameleon of rock, you
yeah.
know.
And David Bowie's another example right there where he had those different eras,
Mhm.
the Berlin trilogy, and then
Yeah.
coming back and doing, his Tin Machine stuff, and then his stuff with Trent Reznor, and then coming back those last two albums, just amazing. The Next Day and Black Star.
Oh,
What a way to end a career.
absolutely.
Two of my all-time favorite Bowie albums, back to back to end a career. Uh, Not just one good album, two good albums
Yeah.
to end your career. Just yeah, he's a perfect example of what we're talking about.
Like,
And whenever you're trying to rate these different eras and like what is the better of them, obviously that's ridiculous. But
objective.
you can kind of go back retroactively over time and look at the error of your ways and realize that it does really boil down to where your point of entry was. Nine
Mhm.
times out of 10, it really does. I mean, sometimes I'll go back and listen to a band's back catalog and say, yeah, Jimmy Joe was right. The debut is their best. But most of the, I'm gonna say about 70% of the time, my favorite album by a band is that first album I heard by them.
Yeah. I've started to have to delineate when I talk about them as, a band's best album versus my favorite album.
Oh,
Because,
sure.
with Alice Cooper, I would say his best album is Billion Dollar Babies. But a personal favorite, the one that I reach for the most, is Trash from 1989.
Yeah, that's a good
You
one
know,
too.
and with Yes, my favorite or the best Yes album, Close to the Edge, but my favorite Yes album, Union.
Yeah,
So I recognize that it is not as great as that stuff, but
right,
then I don't have a connection to Close to the Edge. I
right.
have the connection with Union. I
Yeah.
remember getting a cassette of that and sitting in my garage on a little Walkman listening to that. And I just have these great memories of my mind being blown by what I was hearing. And I don't have that with Close to the Edge.
Right,
But
right.
when I listen to Close to the Edge, I'm immediately able to recognize how great that stuff is.
Yeah,
So, where you are at the time, what's going on around you, all of it plays into it. And then certainly your age and everything. And I think same thing for a band talking about like Rush, who, other than John Rutsey, their drummer
yeah.
change after the first album, they didn't change members. But there are distinct errors. There's that full-on prog, and then, as you said, they get into the whole, I don't even know what you call the early era with the moving to pictures, but they really got into the 80s sound later on with moving, or what was it,
Yeah,
Power
Signals and
Windows, and
Power Windows and
yeah, and then
Grace
they
Under
drifting
Pressure,
back in 90s, like on Counterparts,
Counterparts,
right?
Presto, Roll the Bones.
Yeah. So they,
Distinct eras. I mean, I love that about Rush. You can have your favorite era,
mhm,
but to me, looking back now that we've got the Rush discography is finished, it's done. We can look at it now with a little bit of objectivity.
yeah,
And They never put out a bad album.
yeah. What do you
They
think of
did
Vapor
not.
Trails?
I did not like Vapor Trails when
I,
it first came out.
I,
That was one of the ones that I had a serious problem with Vapor Trails.
yeah,
I didn't really like anything on it. It just kind of went in one ear and out the other. And then a few years later, they reissued it as a remastered and remixed
right,
version. And all of a sudden, I kind of got it.
yeah,
And I do enjoy it. It's never going to be my favorite Rush album, but it's actually not bad at all. And the same kind of true for Test for Echo. That was
yeah.
another one that was a bit of a challenge for me. That took a little while,
Mhm.
but over the years, I'm able to go back and say, okay, those records are a little different, but they're still great. They're still awesome.
Yeah, I was, I came into them on Roll the Bones.
Yeah,
and love that album. That still ranks very high for me. And I loved Counterparts.
Yeah.
But when Test for Echo came out, it seemed very simplistic
Yeah.
and um, I don't know. It just seemed some of the lyrics were cheesy on it.
And some of the edges had been sanded off.
Yeah,
It just felt a little bit just kind of not there.
right.
Especially compared to Counterparts, which
Absolutely.
to me had so much energy and drive and just felt kind of a raw energy to it that
Right.
was missing from Test for Echo and Vapor Trails. But I think they snapped out of it. I love Snakes and Arrows, and I absolutely love the final album, Clockwork Angels. Just what a great way to go out. So
No,
every
absolutely.
era's got a lot to offer, even the eras that we maybe don't love as much. Me,
Right.
of course, I love the prog era. That's
Yeah.
I'm thinking 2112,
Right.
Farewell to Kings, Hemispheres. Yeah, that's my rush right there.
I've
But
recently discovered the beauty of 2112 after years of not being able to get into it. I did a Rush album ranking a while back. And so I really was like, all right, I have to dive into these. I got to see what's going on. And I was listening. I'm like, why didn't I like this before?
hmm,
But some of it too has to do with aging.
yeah,
So again, when I'm younger and I'm into a particular genre at the time, I can't necessarily get into that. And then your tastes change, you evolve, you expand, and you listen to another band that opens you up,
right.
and then come back to something, and suddenly you're like, wait a minute, this sounds great. Why didn't I
Yeah.
like it 5 years
I
ago?
don't know. Brendan, sometimes I think it's like if I'm eating a whole bunch of particular food, like
Hmm.
bacon and eggs, and just a whole breakfast menu going on, and then somebody hands me a bowl of pad thai and says, "Hey, give this a try."
Right.
It's not going to work for me, man. It's just not.
Right, right.
You kind of got to be ready for stuff,
You do.
and it's got to happen at the right time. And music is the same way. If I'm listening to a whole bunch of progressive rock and all this crazy noodly stuff with Mellotrons and Hammonds and all this crazy Moog stuff, and then oh, you got to listen to this new shoegaze band.
Hmm.
It's probably not going to sound good to me. I need to like kind of chill out and get my brain right before I listen to a different genre because music is like that. It's such an emotional thing. You're not
Oh,
just listening
completely.
to notes or
Yeah.
what words the singer's singing. It's a little more than that.
I find that I have to sometimes clear the palette. So
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, yeah,
and I buy new releases every week, and it's not always from the same genre,
right.
you know. So you get an album, you get these two different bands that you like, but they're completely different genres, and you put one on, and it just clicks with you immediately, and then you throw the other one on, and you're like, this isn't very good. So you take it off, and you go back to the one that you like, but you might be left thinking it's not a good album.
Yeah,
And I have found you just got to wait until you're in the mood for that. I'll put that back on a couple weeks later. Sometimes it's like a year later.
yeah,
And then you're like, why didn't I like this? But you're
yeah.
right.
And this
Whatever.
is why, boys and girls, this is why physical copies matter.
Hmm.
Because if you're talking about some MP3 file that some band sent you, your 400th email of the week, so some band sending you their EPK. Oh, can you listen to this? Listen, it's gonna get lost. But if you've actually got the physical product, if you've
Hmm.
got the CD, if you've got the vinyl, it could get forgotten and buried for a little while. That happens, man.
Sure.
But if you've got the actual physical copy at some point, it's going to call your name, man. You're going to go through your stuff and you're going to see, oh man, yeah, let me give this another try. Today's
Right.
the day, and you know exactly what I'm
Right.
talking about when
Yeah.
that record sings to you, and you
Yeah.
just know today's the day. You're going to put it on the turntable, and it's going to sound so good, and you're going to find your new favorite band.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens when it's supposed to happen.
No, it does. And you talk about people sending you MP3s and stuff. I
Yeah,
steer clear of that. But if someone sends me a physical CD, right, and I pop it in, and you're right, and I'm kind of like, it's not going to do anything for me. I'm not even going to review this.
yeah,
But I will see it sitting somewhere. and I'll go, I should throw that back on. I don't have anything calling my name right now.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it does. And I just found that in a band called Gone Savage, a
Ooh,
British band that I knew nothing about, but they're on this label called Heaven and Hell, and they sent me 7 or 8 CDs. I
nice.
didn't request them; they just came to me, and I popped them all on at the time. None of them did anything for me. But I went back to this one, and they're like my new favorite band right
Yeah.
now. I'm trying to
Yeah.
dig out everything I can find. I think they got 3 albums
That's
total.
awesome. You see,
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about, boys and girls. If you don't believe in your own music, I mean, listen, if you don't have faith in your own music that you could actually plunk a couple dollars in postage, put one of your CDs in the mail to Brandon or whomever, whatever YouTube channel you think might,
right.
possibly be talking about your kind of music, whatever. If you don't have that kind of faith in your music, why should I spend what 45 minutes, 50 minutes? Some of these albums run over an hour,
Yeah,
Come on, man. I got better things to do with an hour. Think about that. I could get a lot done in an hour
yeah. And
not listening to your music.
and there's nothing tangible about it, meaning even if they put a picture of the artwork in
Yeah,
the email,
something,
I don't know if I
something.
take something out of a package and I flip it over and I have to open it to put it into my player, there's just an immediate connection already.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
I love it when a band sends me stuff and it's like, here you go. I don't care if you review it or not, but just, we hope you listen to it because we love it and
right,
we believe in ourselves,
right.
so that kind of gets me excited too. It's like,
Already.
okay, if they're willing to go through all that, then I'm willing to spend a little bit of time and energy. So, there's still a lot going on musically in the underground.
Mhm.
And it's exciting to have a YouTube channel, right? Because you're kind of in the mix of all of it, right? Because
Yeah,
if
yeah.
it's funny to think if you were like some kid today starting a band,
Hmm.
you'd probably want to get on Brendan Snyder's good side. You would. You'd probably
Yeah,
want
yeah,
to have Pete Pardo talking about your band.
yeah, yeah.
So it is fun, kind of this position that we find ourselves in as these micro influencers,
Right,
right?
right, right,
But it's something that I actually take very seriously because the people that watch our channels, they do trust us because they
yeah,
know we spend a whole lot more time listening to music than they do.
right.
And so they trust us to give them the right recommendations. So that, I kind of say, I listen to all the prog, so you don't have to, you know. And
That's
then
a
the
good
stuff I
point.
talk about is the stuff that I love the most. So, but it is kind of interesting because back in the day, right? You had, the major labels and you had the distribution channels and you had radio. And then in 1980, you had MTV. And it was just a very formulaic way of doing business. Now there are no rules,
No, none.
you
And
know?
that's kind of what we've become, though. We are like the radio stations now.
Yeah.
I kind of looked at like, I've been getting more, trying to have more and more people come on to do interviews, and sometimes the video does a few thousand views, other times it doesn't do much of anything, and I
Yeah.
kind of think, well, what's the point? But then I remembered that these artists used to go around and on tour, and they would stop by radio stations
Anyway,
and they would do their interviews, and how many people were really listening to those? So
right.
whether it was a few hundred or a few thousand, but if you did it all around the country, then you are making a little bit of a fan base everywhere, right?
That's right.
Our
Yeah.
channels are kind of the same way. We have fan bases that go out all over the world, but it's a few people here, a few people
Yeah.
there, whatever. And so if only a few people hear me talk about this particular band or this artist or do this interview, it's getting it out. It's just up to that artist to get on a number of channels like ours, and they can get the word out.
No, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's a little different in that our people, let's face it, you've got 30,000 subscribers, Brandon. Congratulations, amazing. I hit 15,000 not long ago, so we're not talking about ginormous numbers,
Yeah,
but
we're not
what
Pete
we
Pardo level.
no, even Pete, let's face it, in the grand scheme of
Yeah,
things, 100,000, back in the old days, radio stations would be getting that on the regs on their when they get the Arbitron reports back in the major markets. So, We're still small potatoes no matter how you cut it.
Right.
But we have something that they never had back in the old days. We have a true connection to our fan bases, to our subscribers, to our members. They could watch anybody, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They have almost an infinite amount of selection on YouTube,
Right.
but they have chosen to watch us.
Yeah.
So we create this real strong bond with our audiences, so that when I run out and I say, hey, you need to buy an album by band X, Y, or Z,
Hmm.
uh, a shockingly high percentage of them do.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
it's
and
a
and
very
that
cool
and
thing.
that gives me a lot of satisfaction. It really does.
Well, and like you said, I take that very seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, in all the videos, this one included that we do, whatever we talk about, I know is informing people. It's if somebody likes other recommendations that I've made, and I say my favorite era of something, or I say, hey man, these last three Styx albums are phenomenal, and someone's going, I've never really gotten into them. I just know the hits. Hopefully someone's going to say, well, Brendan, I like the other stuff that you've suggested. I'm going to go check those out now.
Yeah, please do. Please do. I give The Mission a
Hmm.
9.5 out of 10. I give Crash of the Crown a 10 out of 10. And
Yeah.
I give the new one, Circling from Above, a 9 out of 10.
Do you?
That's an amazing run. I mean, come on, man. I mean, all three I rate 9 out of 10 or higher. And like I said, I think it's the best 3 album run they've ever done. So, favorite era of Styx?
I,
I think it's this one right here now.
I would agree. For me,
Yeah.
it's this one here. Um, but I would say so. I don't know. Let's run through a few of these bands
Yeah.
and just hit who are
Okay.
our favorite
Fun.
eras, right?
Fun.
So, Alice Cooper. Do you prefer Alice Cooper band or Alice Cooper solo?
I'm old school, man. Give me Alice Cooper band. I'm the pretties for you and easy action kind of guy. I Killers, love it to death. Oh yeah. But I love Alice Cooper too, so do
Yeah,
not get me
yeah.
wrong.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely a fan of the solo era of Alice, but again, as we've said, that's a lot has to do when I
It's
get
yeah.
into it. But
And they're all good, so
of the era of Alice Cooper, I liked his Epic Records years, which was
mm,
Trash in '89, Hey Stupid, and Last Temptation. So those three albums together, I always thought was really good.
nice.
Pink
Good
Floyd,
run.
what's your favorite era? The Sid era, the art rock, the prog, the AOR melodic rock?
Yeah. It's obviously the prog era, which is clearly, yeah, maybe we could start it with metal.
Yeah,
Metal, Obscured by Clouds, Dark Side. Wish You Were Here in Animals.
yeah. I
Yeah.
love animals, but I have to say, if I could only have a distinction between the Roger Waters era or the David Gilmour, I'd have to go David Gilmour.
Yeah.
But that's probably far more a nostalgic thing. Although for me, David Gilmour's guitar makes the sound. That is the sound for me. And he was able to run free with it from '87 on. So, and I think the last album that they did together, The Endless River, is one of the greatest things. Even though
I
it
think it's a good record. It's
was a
just
good
not,
album.
yeah. I think people just expect more vocals.
Yeah, I know. But Pink Floyd, I mean, they had instrumentals. So why
Yeah.
not an album of all instrumentals?
I had no problem with it. I'm a Richard Wright fan. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
and that's my thing. I think Richard Wright was the unsung hero who doesn't get enough love.
How about this one? I'm gonna give you a hot take right
Right?
now. The two best solo albums by any Pink Floyd member.
Well, I will say I think the Richard Wright album, Wet Dream, is a really great album that should have been a Floyd album.
And I like his second solo album, Broken China. So those are the two. I think they're the two best Pink Floyd solo albums, and they're both Richard Wrights. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan. I think the man was done dirty.
I gotta say, yeah, definitely. But I also have to say the most recent David Gilmour, Luck and Strange, that I was
Yeah,
not expecting to be
nice.
that good. That's almost on par with the David Gilmour era Pink Floyd stuff, I think.
That is a good record.
Yeah.
Very solid record.
All right, we haven't talked about this band
All
yet,
right,
but
what do we got next?
White Snake.
Oh.
You like the original more bluesy era of the band when they were actually a band,
Right.
or do you like it when they like in the '80s when they became almost a glam metal group or
You see,
somewhere in between?
here is where normally one would think I would go with the Marsden, the old
Mickey Moody.
school era. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I wasn't listening to them in the 70s. A lot
They
of those records weren't even released in the US,
yeah.
It was like
And David
I
Geffen.
I didn't know Whitesnake till Slide It In.
Right. I
That's the first record I ever heard from them. So I'm gonna go with 80s Whitesnake here. Absolutely. Uh yeah, and why not? It just kind of is emblematic of the 80s is
oh yeah.
David and Tawny Katan and just that whole thing. It's just I
Yeah,
is there
if they didn't have the Tawny Katane in those three videos in 1987, I don't know if Whitesnake would be as big as they are
I
today.
don't think they would have been. No,
Every
I don't think they would have
13-year-old
been.
kid in America were losing his mind
Yeah.
with her doing those flips, you know.
And it's just so funny because every single kid listening to Whitesnake in the 80s, not one of them had any idea what band John Lord had been in or Ian
Yeah.
Pace or David Coverdale. It was just a band with some cool videos on MTV. Uh, but you see a lot of that crossover that we were talking about with different members of different bands. You got your White Snake and your Deep
Almost reformed
Purple.
Whitesnake,
Yeah,
bringing Roger Glover and John Lord over into the mix and Ian Pace.
yeah,
Glover, I think, was producing, but
right.
you know. But that's an interesting one in that that really had to do with location. We're both in the US. The
Yeah,
US didn't get those early albums. So when Geffen Records signed them and brought them over for Slide It In and doing a remix on it different than the UK edition, that's what got us, right?
yeah,
So not even really an age thing. It had to do with a location thing.
yeah, yeah. Geography and politics,
Yeah.
uh, record label politics. Who wanted to release what record in what territory became an issue for Whitesnake early on, but certainly they figured it out. How about Deep Purple? Where do you stand? We were talking about the different Mark 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. I think we figured we were up to Mark 9. Do
Yes.
you have a version of that band that you prefer?
Yeah, yeah. My favorite has got to be the one when Steve Morse joined, which I don't know if that was like six or seven, because once Lord changed and they brought
Yeah,
in Don Airy, that's another mark. But
yeah,
yeah, from Perpendicular on, um, I was never a big fan of Smoke on the Water. I just thought that was one of those overplayed songs, and everybody who has a guitar plays that song. And I was learning guitar at that time, so I just couldn't do it. But when Steve Morse joined, I don't know, it changed everything. And it wasn't like I was a fan of his before. That album came out, and I thought, oh, let me check it out, sort of thing.
yeah.
Like,
What's weird is that lineup was the longest standing lineup, and everybody looks back to those great 70s lineup. Mark II, probably, the Smoke on the Water example probably is perfect there. But, they had some really cool short lived lineups. Mark III, what, that lasted like 1 year.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, there you go. Burn and what was the other one?
Stormbringer.
Stormbringer. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. That lineup only gave us two, and they were both amazing. And they were both in 1974.
I really liked the Tommy Bolin era, the follow up to that,
Yeah.
when they did Come Taste the Band.
A lot of people don't like that album.
I
Is
know.
it because there's no Richie Blackmore? Is that the problem?
I think that's the biggest problem, but also that album is much more soulful
Yeah.
and got the R&B sort of stuff to it more than Stormbringer had. Stormbringer
Yeah.
still had that heavy title track on it, but then after that, much more the Glenn Hughes influence and David Coverdale, were allowed to run with it. And once Richie Blackmore was out, I think they really did more of that. But I don't know, man. I like what Tommy Bolin brought to the band. I would have
I
loved
did too. I
to have
did
gotten
too.
two, three more albums.
It would have been very, very interesting because after that, apparently, the band goes dark for a little while. They go on a little hiatus. And then the Mark II lineup comes back.
Perfect
Uh,
Strangers.
See that I remember the day that album came out, man.
Yeah.
It was a big deal, and their American label had no idea how to handle it because didn't they get signed to like MCA for it or something like that? And they had no idea how to handle Deep Purple. They'd never had a band like Deep Purple on that label before. They were up to their eyeballs in country music and stuff like that, and their distribution deal with Motown was starting to go south, so they were distracted. They had no idea how to handle Deep Purple. So I don't think the album performed as well in the U.S. as it should have, because that Perfect Strangers album was great. I thought it was
Yeah,
amazing.
even though it didn't, I mean, it was still a huge success for them.
Yeah,
That
it
was a
sold pretty well, I
comeback
think.
all
Yeah,
the way around for them, regardless of maybe album sales. I
all
mean, they
right.
were selling out the tours. People were losing their minds for that.
Oh
But then,
yeah,
that didn't last long either. That was two
no.
albums, right?
No, but you had Ian. Then at some point he drifted into Black Sabbath, and then you had
Well, that's
Dio and Rainbow had Richie Blackmore, and all this cross pollination between all these bands going on at this time.
right,
Uh,
right.
it was weird. Uh, Trying to keep, you almost wanted to have like one of those schematics where you're keeping track,
Right.
arrows going this way and that way with like different
Family
colored
tree.
twines. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It was getting really confusing for the average fan. And again, this is pre-internet,
Mhm.
so you didn't really know what you were getting.
You didn't know. I mean, and you might not know till you open the album up. I
Yeah,
remember in 19, I want to say it's 94, when Cross Purposes by Black Sabbath came out. Now, this was after the 1992 reunion that they did to close Ozzy Osbourne's show.
right.
So they had gotten back together, and there's no internet telling me one way or the other. And I'm sure it was in magazines, but I hadn't read anything.
Right.
All of a sudden, one day, I see Black Sabbath Cross Purposes. I'm a fairly young kid still at this point. I go up to the guy at the front counter. I'm like, "Is this album with Ozzy?" I remember the guy saying, "I don't know who's in the lineup." You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
decided to take a chance on it. And of course, Tony Iommi was there, Geezer Butler was there, but it had, I want to say, Bobby Rondinelli on
Yeah.
drums, and then Tony Martin. He
Yeah.
had come back. So, he's in the group after Glenn Hughes, who
Right.
was in Deep Purple. Right? Like, Black Sabbath is crazy. Ozzy, Dio, Ian Gillan
Yeah.
of Deep Purple, Glenn Hughes, who was
Glenn
also in Deep Purple, you
and
know,
Tony.
and then
And,
Tony,
and then Ozzy, and then Dio again, and
right?
then
And then back to Ozzy.
and then back to Tony.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Again, you got to keep score of this. It's absolutely insane. Fans, obviously get a little bit confused, but on the subject of Black Sabbath and Ozzy and Dio and all that stuff, a lot of different content creators been putting out a lot of different stuff about Ozzy.
Mhm.
And do you feel it was a little bit overkill? Do you think that some creators were just shedding crocodile tears for views?
I don't know if they were.
Or is that just me that was starting to feel that way after a little while?
I know a number. I did, I think, a total of 4 videos over the past week. Um, but it was like I did a tribute, and then I did a run through of my album collection. I made a short version of the album collection, and then I
That doesn't count.
reviewed the Ozzy at 75 book.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I didn't think that I went over on it, but I
Yeah.
got a few comments in there on it.
Did
I did
you?
see some people that that's all they were posting every day.
Hmm. Yeah. I
And
was seeing a lot of that. I was
yeah,
seeing a lot of overkill. I'm asking for a friend.
yeah,
I'm
right.
actually thinking about doing a Black Sabbath or Ozzy ranking here soon.
And I think now would be the good time to do it because it will get views, and I don't think there's anything wrong with doing things that are part of pop culture or whatever's going on at the moment. I mean, we're in this to get views for the channel and to grow our channels, and I want to get the most information out to people. So I want to get the stuff you
Sure. And let's be honest, it's no fun doing this if nobody's watching it.
yeah,
You know, it is a lot of fun and it is rewarding knowing that whatever you're doing, people are enjoying and
yeah.
you know, you're helping people either out by informing them or entertaining them. And a couple bands before we wrap this up,
Hmm.
couple bands we have not mentioned that I was thinking about
All right.
having distinct eras. There was a band that had such distinct eras that they changed the name of the band each time they wanted to like kind of, you know, shed their skin, I guess, and do something new. Jefferson Airplane
All right. Yeah.
becomes Jefferson Starship, becomes
Yeah.
Starship. I give them all the credit in the world. Truth in advertising. I
Yeah.
hated Starship, but at least they weren't trying to sell themselves off as Jefferson Airplane. You know,
I agree. I agree.
so I appreciated that. The exact opposite of that was what happened to my beloved Chicago.
Okay. Yeah.
Where they were the first band I fell in love with, and they went from being this really cool jazz rock, progressive, edgy protest band, angry band, a
Hmm.
band with a lot to say. Uh, to go from that to what they turned into in the 80s just really broke my heart. And finally, uh, Aerosmith, man.
Yeah.
They were one of my favorite bands growing up. And as a child of the 70s, I grew up rocking to the debut Get Your Wings, Toys in the Attic Rocks, and even Draw the Line.
I love
But
drawing.
then when they got into this whole boy oh boy, let's bring in some outside songwriters
Right.
and let's pretend there's no guitar player in the band and you know have horns and strings and
Right.
Diane Warren tracks. It's like that's not my Aerosmith, man. So that's a band that two distinct eras.
Well, I think they had even more like three, where
The
there's
middle.
yeah, there's
Yeah,
the '70s era, and even
yeah.
when they made their return with Done with Mirrors, they still sounded just straight
True
ahead
that. Yeah,
rock.
yeah,
With Permanent Vacation into Pump, they were definitely in the glam metal
yeah.
phase.
That's where it was starting to
Even the
slide over.
yeah, and even the Get a Grip would kind of have fallen into that, but that album had, in my opinion, too many ballads on it.
Yeah,
But once that was over, they shifted into something else and they started changing with whatever was the hot flavor of the month
yeah,
in terms of the sounds. And that's where they lost me,
yeah.
you know. And I'm one of those ones, I consider myself to be a pretty forgiving music fan going along their journeys with a lot of these, but there's albums I can't even listen to
Yeah.
that they did later on.
Yeah, unfortunately, it became kind of a money grab, and you
Yeah.
know that happens for a lot of bands, and God bless them, because for every band that was able, and a lot of what I had hard feelings about were it was basically the same thing. It was bands that I loved in the
Hmm.
70s trying to navigate the 80s.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they all did it differently, right?
Yeah.
Some did it by hiring outside songwriters and
Mhm.
continuing to have strings of hits like Heart and like Cheap Trick,
Yeah.
whom I loved in the 70s, but their 80s output, probably not so much, and probably for the same reasons that I just stated. But there were other bands that kind of found a way to be interesting, change their sound. Rush, right? They didn't
Right.
sound nothing like Rush in the 70s,
But at
right?
least Rush was writing their own stuff.
That's
See,
right.
I do like Heart's self-titled '85 album, but they weren't writing it.
No, no, they
And
were
that's
not.
always really bothered me.
It's a
Where,
bummer, I think.
you
It
know,
is.
if you're a fan of a band for its sound, and generally that's the band that's writing the material and everything, and then all of
Yeah,
a sudden that goes away, somebody else is writing it. It's like
it's a problem for me.
they're
Yeah,
just sessions musicians. Anyone could have recorded that
yeah.
album and had the hit.
Hey, here's another band that actually navigated that 70s to 80s divide. Because let's face it, every band had to change. Not one single band from the 70s remained unscathed once MTV came onto the scene.
Right.
How about the way ZZ Top navigated that change?
There you go,
That's
man.
how you do it, actually.
Yeah.
Embracing everything that was new, but you're still ZZ Top. Nobody's going to think that's any other band but ZZ Top, but
Yeah.
they also sounded completely different.
They did. Well, keyboards and the electronic drums did it.
Yeah.
But they went a step further, where they went back and they took their '70s catalog and added electronic drums to it, which as somebody who likes the 80s era, I
Yeah.
love until I found out that wasn't the original
Right.
stuff.
Right.
And I had to go track down all the original recordings of
Right.
it.
See, I'm old enough, Brandon, that I remember working in the record store in the 80s,
Mhm.
and the young cats would come up and be like, talking about, hey, you got that new Wings album. I'm like, oh, yeah, cool. You like Wings? That's awesome. I'm a big fan of McCartney. Yeah, I love the Beatles. And they'd be like, who?
Yeah.
I'm like, Paul, the band Paul was in before Wings. What were they called again?
Wow.
The Beatles. I knew we were in trouble all the way back then. I knew the signs are on the wall. There were danger signs. Red flags are popping up everywhere. This younger generation shaking my fist at the clouds.
Right,
Oh,
right.
they just don't get it, do they? Oh, they actually do get it. It's the boomers like me that don't get it. We're
Well, at
we're
least,
so stuck in the past, but we
yeah.
try.
But I will say that I do like when the younger kids can get into these artists, even if they don't know their histories, and really like them, and
Yeah.
not just say, oh, they're a bunch of old boomers or whatever they are. I'm not going to listen to this. You
There's
know,
a lot of youngsters out there. I mean, the internet has definitely opened up the playing field for artists of every era. Because if you've got something interesting, now there's easy access. You don't have to like go to the record store and buy stuff.
mhm,
That'd be great if they did, but that's not how they're consuming music. They're going on to Spotify, they're
yep,
going on to YouTube, they're going on to wherever they're going on to these days. And that's how they're consuming their music. So that's why it is absolutely imperative uh, that bands understand that times change. Nobody's buying 8 tracks anymore.
yeah,
It's okay. Change is part of life. It's going to continue to happen. It's going to
right,
continue to change, and we need to be right there so that we can put the great music into the kids' hands because rock and roll is not dead. We kept hearing that, right? How often have we heard that? Oh, rock is dead, right?
yeah. For
I don't
20
know,
years,
man. Last time I checked, in the last 2 months, we've had two rock albums hit number one on the album charts.
yeah.
Uh, right, with Sleep Token and with Ghost.
Ghost, yeah. I
You
didn't know
know,
Sleep Token did it, so that's awesome.
yeah, they both hit number one on the
It had
Billboard
been
charts.
5 years between Ghost and AC/DC's
Yeah.
Power.
And then before that, we had Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I think that was it for the decade for
Yeah.
rock albums hitting number one. So having two hit, so rapidly one after the other gives me hope. It warms my heart. Rock and roll is not dead, and it's here to stay. It's just everything's cyclical.
Yeah, it is. And
The
so,
kids are listening to what they're listening to right now, and I personally don't have a problem with the, I watch Rick Beato all the time, and he's crying all these crocodile tears about, oh, modern music's this, that, and the other thing. He's dead wrong, man. Chappell Roan's amazing.
mhm.
Uh, Sabrina Carpenter's amazing. Olivia Rodrigo's amazing. Taylor Swift is amazing. I could go on and on about modern artists that are just tearing it up, putting out great music. So, uh,
Yeah, there is, and it may not be the exact same stuff that we grew up with, whether you in the '70s, me in the '80s, or into the '90s and stuff like that. I do think there is great music that is out there, and I'm glad that the kids today have that opportunity to listen to it all, at the
yeah, that's it. They can
touch of a
listen to
finger
it
or whatever.
all. Yeah.
Yeah, and they don't, you know, genres were a big thing when we were growing up. You listened to rock, you listened
Yeah.
to prog, you listened to metal, but you usually didn't cross over into those. Kids today, they don't have that.
They don't
Most of them
know.
don't even know genres,
Yeah.
or it's just not discussed. And a lot of these younger artists, they'll make their rock record, they'll make their country album, they'll make
Yeah.
their hip hop album. It doesn't matter. And the kids embrace it all. If they like the fan, or if the band or whoever the artist, they go along for the ride. And I think that's a very cool thing. It's
Yeah.
not for me, but I'm glad that it's opening these kids up to all different styles of music. And maybe that'll also bring them over to the bands that we love.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think another point that I would just like to kind of close this whole chain of thought about is about rock and roll. And that is, I'm not worried about the future of rock and roll.
No, not.
I'm absolutely not. You know why? Because it's the best music ever written. Rock and roll. That's not just me, man. That's empirical fact.
Guitars will never
Roll
go
over
away.
Beethoven. Give Tchaikovsky the news. Rock and roll will never, ever, ever die. It's
Right.
not going to happen. It may not always be the number one genre on planet Earth like it was in the 70s and 80s.
Right.
That's okay.
That's right.
But it will never die.
Yeah. No, instrument, guitars, drums, bass, all that, that's never going to go away. So therefore, I don't think rock is ever going to go away.
Nah. I ain't worried about it.
Yeah, I think we're all set here.
Yeah, I think we're good. I think we're good.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in on this, and certainly weigh in the comments. What do you think is the best era by some of these bands that we talked a bit about today? Whether it's Alice Cooper, Van Halen, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, Yes, Pink Floyd. I mean, we hit so many different ones.
Genesis, Rush, and
It's
on and on and on.
Yeah, so many great ones. And, if this does really well here, Scott and I may pair up again and we'll focus in on some specific bands and really break down the different eras and the different genres. But we thought, let's kick this off and just do a big overview and talk about a lot of great bands. So certainly, Scott, thanks for being here and thanks for doing that.
Hey, that was a lot of fun. Hopefully I can get you over on my channel very, very soon.
Yeah, that's the next thing. Me to head over to yours. Before we run off, though, what do you got coming up on your channel?
Oh boy, I had a great episode last week where I took the top 25 selling albums from the 70s and I just basically gave a score to all of them, a
Mhm.
1 out of 10 score. The brutal honesty, how I felt about Grease and Saturday Night Fever. Oh boy, oh boy. Well, guess what, kiddies? It did so well. We're doing the 80s this week. We're
Oh,
taking
nice.
the top 25 selling albums of the 80s, and I'm going to skewer them. I'm going to butcher them. I'm going to tell you how much I hate them. Or it's not clickbait week.
Right.
I'll do that later. Now, and just kind of tell you my feelings about them because, the 70s and the 80s, that's when the album charts had some really, really, really good things at number one.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's a
Yeah.
good idea for a
Yeah,
video.
it should be fun.
So,
It's just an excuse to talk about a bunch of albums.
right. So over here, with the new Alice Cooper album having just come out, being the eighth, I think it was, band album, but the 30th for Alice Cooper, the man
I
album,
think that's right.
I decided to rank all 30 Alice Cooper albums. And what an undertaking that was.
Nice.
Trying to cover all that. So that's going to be a popping up here. And then I'm actually in the process of working on an interview with Greg Giuffria from Angel,
Mm.
his band, and House of Lords. So hopefully that's going to come to fruition. I had a record label reach out to me and ask if I would be interested.
No.
So as long
Hell
as
of a
Greg,
band. Hell of a band.
yeah, that's right. Hell of a band. So keep an eye out for that. I hope that'll be appearing this upcoming week as well.
Awesome.
Scott, thanks for being here, and we'll have to do this again. And
Absolutely.
for everyone tuning in out there, thanks so much, and we'll see you real soon. Bye, everyone.